Good morning, sports fans. You're listening to 96.9 FM WHYR-LP Baton Rouge Community Radio.
This is Eric Hatfield along with Coach Perry Daniels, and we are here to bring you the latest, the greatest, the best, and the most entertaining in high school, college, and professional sports. You are listening to Louisiana All American Sports. Ain't nobody don't ask me, I'm just so fresh, so clean. Good morning, Baton Rouge. It's another fantastic Saturday here on Louisiana All American Sports on 96.9 FM WHYR-LP Baton Rouge Community Radio. I'm Eric Hatfield.
And I'm Coach Perry Daniels.
And we have a new voice in the studio today. Not that new, actually. You've heard this gentleman a few times before, but we call him the Professor.
Professor, man, our show just got a whole lot more intelligent.
Yeah. I felt my IQ level rise. Unlike some of these stories we're going to cover that made my IQ level feel like it was dropping as I read them.
Good morning. You guys are really flattering. Thank you for having me.
All right, well,
welcome to the show, man. You know, we have high expectations of you, and you've done such a great job with your segments that, you know, we just kind of figured it would be good for you to bring you into the studio and give us some enlightenment on a regular basis, as not only us but our listening audience.
Absolutely. So there's a lot going on. You know, it's funny because leading up to July, we kind of tried to prepare y'all for a lot of big empties, but there's been nothing but a lot to talk about in the month of July, honestly, between NBA free agency and World Cup, and now we're less than a week away from the National Football League returning. Preseason, granted, but, you know, for football fans, it's almost as good. We kind of get our fix.
That's right, man.
So moving on to one of the bigger topics in the NFL offseason, Tony Dungy, one of my first of all, let me say all this to say Tony Dungy is one of my favorite coaches of all time. He is one of the most universally respected figures in professional football. Won a Super Bowl with the coach. Did a fine job coaching the Buccaneers out of their doldrums before the Buccaneers won a Super Bowl. Was a very good NFL player, longtime assistant. So, you know, if I'm propping him up like this, and if you're a sports fan, you know who Tony Dungy is, you know there's a but coming. But Tony Dungy stepped in a little doo-doo this week. Last week, Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy gave an interview with the Tampa Tribune and said regarding St. Louis Rams defensive end Michael Sam, of course, drafted out of the University of Missouri in the 7th round of the 2014 NFL Draft, potentially the first openly gay NFL player to make a roster. He said, quote, Dungy said, "I would not have taken him. Not because I don't believe Michael Sam should have a chance to play, but I wouldn't want to deal with all of it. It's not going to be totally smooth. Things will happen." Boy, that has just a hint of 1960s on it a little bit when I hear that. And coming from Tony Dungy, it's absolutely shocking. Now, like all public figures that go a little too far, he did his backpedaling some on the Dan Patrick Show and tried to clarify what he was saying. He did go on to make a comparison between Michael Sam and Jonathan Martin. He said, I talked to some general managers, and they said Jonathan definitely has the talent to play in the league, but would they want the distraction of everybody's following the story and people asking their players over and over again, how are things going, what's going on with Jonathan, who's saying what to him? And because of that fact, they didn't view him as a difference maker. They probably wouldn't want the distraction. So that's a good job to try to back out of it, Coach, but we were all born during the day and none of us yesterday.
So, Eric, hold on. Wait a minute. Jonathan Martin, bring me to speed on that.
Jonathan Martin signed with the San Francisco 49ers. He's with Jim Harbaugh and company, so he'll be helping to protect Colin Kaepernick. I got to say, you know, if you want to go to just a community that's extremely tolerant and probably a team that's got a mixture of characters on there, that's probably not a bad mix. And, you know, San Francisco 49ers, first-class organization, and Jim Harbaugh, as nutty as he is, seems to have a great relationship with his players, or at least have a hand on his players. So it looks.
So wait a minute. Wait. So Jonathan Martin is the guy that was in Miami.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah, bring our.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, folks. Yeah, I keep forgetting not all of y'all stay tuned to ESPN 24/7 like I do. For those of y'all out there in the listening audience, Jonathan Martin is an offensive lineman. He was with the Miami Dolphins last year. If you listen to this show sort of regularly, we talked a few times about the Bullygate scandal. That was a fellow who was he had a teammate, Richie Incognito, who's kind of a known goon, veteran in the NFL. And Richie Incognito bullied him, made him take the guys out for dinner. Jonathan Martin was a rookie a couple of years ago, still one of the newer guys, and he picked on Martin over and over again and sent him racially insensitive texts and talked about his mom and picked on him. And then when it came to light, Jonathan Martin left the team last year. And that's really what kind of kicked the dust up, and people investigated and found, and that's when this came to public light. And interestingly, a lot of NFL players took Incognito's side. This is in spite of Incognito using the N-word in some of his texts to Martin. So that kind of gives you an idea of the dynamic that we're talking about here. So Martin...
See, but the NFL never released that this was the real issue here, Eric. And at the time on this show,
right,
we stated that, well, I don't think we went public with it.
Right, we
we insinuated, we kind of knew
something was up.
This was the issue.
Right.
You know, his sexuality.
Right. We speculated that could be a possibility.
Right.
We didn't know it, so now Tony Dungy's kind of throwing it out into the fray. You know, and Jonathan Martin's a different kind of guy. He's from Stanford. He's kind of cerebral, but as we had talked about last year, there are lots of smart guys in the NFL. I'm sure there's some nerds in the NFL.
Right. And just because you're intelligent in the NFL doesn't ostracize you.
Right.
I knew at the time there had to be something else.
Yeah.
You know, that placed this guy in a situation to where his teammates wouldn't support him.
Right. Now we're speculating. We still don't know that, but it's it's these two pages in history could be stuck together. We don't know yet, but it is interesting. Then you get into San Francisco of all places. Now I'm reaching here, but
yeah, I mean, if that is the case, there's not, like you said, there's not a more tolerant community.
Right.
For him.
Precisely. So
we're making assumptions. His sexuality has been questioned.
We made a go ahead, Perry.
But I think that's, yes, we are making an assumption, and we're making that assumption based on the comments this week by Tony Dungy.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So here's my problem with Dungy. I don't have a problem. Actually, I actually admire it when somebody comes out and says something that might go a little bit against the grain. That's great. But I had my biggest couple of gripes I had with what Dungy did and said. I find it very hypocritical. Number one, he comes out and says, I wouldn't want to deal with all of it. I wouldn't want to things will happen. Okay, fine, but then don't try to backpedal at the same time and say, not because I don't believe Michael Sam shouldn't have had a chance to play, because if you were the coach, you wouldn't have given him a chance to play. And actually, jokingly, Michael Sam said, thank goodness he wasn't the coach of the St. Louis Rams. When the media asked him about it, Michael Sam he was very smooth about the way when he was asked for his response to the comments. So that's my first issue. If you're gonna say something, own it. Don't hedge on it if you're going to be controversial.
Right.
Second, this is the same man that threw his weight behind Michael Vick, who was, doing time on dogfighting charges. You heard about the way some of those animals were treated. It was very graphic and horrendous. I won't repeat it here. There's some people that might never forgive him. The people that love their dogs in this country. We are a dog-loving nation. And he got behind Michael Vick. And to his credit, Michael Vick seems to have completely turned his life around. Good for him. But Tony Dungy cheerled for him, a guy who committed a crime, who did time, not just was gay. Keyshawn Johnson back when he was with the Buccaneers, people forget because Keyshawn's on ESPN with a suit now, but he was a little rambunctious and basically pushed his way out of New York, and he was the key player on that team. Tony Dungy coughed up 2 first-round picks to get him, wound up working the Buccaneers. He eventually was part of a Super Bowl winning team, but Dungy has thrown his weight behind questionable people before. So
I really think, though, Eric, that is the Christian mentality in Tony Dungy. Based on reading his book, he's one of being a coach.
Quiet strength.
Being a coach, he is one of the people that I really look towards for inspiration, and his stance is really consistent with the Christian theme. And a lot of Christians have issues with the sexuality issue. And the other issues that you brought up, the Michael Vick, the Keyshawn Johnson, is a matter of forgiveness and giving a second opportunity, which is very consistent with that Christian faith. So this doesn't really surprise me. You would hope to see society, and particularly that religion, become a little bit more accepting of these folks, and I just don't don't know what stand to take in this regard. Everyone, regardless of their sexuality, has a right to earn a living.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And this guy, and I'm scratching my head thinking, this is a guy who's supposed to be a leader of men. I mean, this guy's been a trailblazer. I mean, one of the theories that was kicked around in media, and the only reason I'm even introducing this to the audience because it was obviously interesting because it was talked about all week. I very much disagree with this comparison,
right.
But a lot of folks said, Tony Dungy is African American. He was one of the very, very first black assistants in the NFL back in the early 80s, yes. After he had finished playing. He was among that first wave of black coaches in the NFL to really have some success, after Art Shell and all them. I think he was, anyway, second or third to be hired. And, the Buccaneers gave him a chance and he wound up winning a Super Bowl. And, well, what if somebody said, well, I know he's a good coach, but he's black, things might happen. I understand the reasoning behind that argument. I have a bit of a problem with it because I think that the persecution and the violence and the history that frankly black people have suffered over the course of this country versus what gay people have had to endure, stuff that gay people have at least had the option to tuck away if they want to. I think that the levels are very different, so it bothered me a little bit. But I understood the reasoning of the argument.
So basically, you can keep your sexuality in the closet. You cannot keep your race in the closet.
Right? Yeah, you're dealing with that 24/7, 365. Anybody who's not blind, can stick that to you. You have to deal with that every day. If you're gay, you only have to deal with it if you choose to. So that's some empowerment that gay people have. Second of all, the level of persecution hasn't been as bad. I mean, you haven't seen, crosses getting burned on lawns because some gay guy went to go vote. Right. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Come on, Professor. Give us some knowledge.
Exactly. Well, I'd like to chime in. I hope it's not a comparison of apple and oranges, but I want to make a statement about the Sam situation. I liken that to the media circus or the media frenzy that with Dennis Rodman. Personally, if I was a coach, I don't think I would want the distractions that would bring to my team, and this is just my personal opinion. I would like a more. I just wouldn't like the distractions that whole scenario would bring about for my team personally.
Just like Tony Dungy just said,
right.
And that's was the crux of his comment,
right?
That he wouldn't like those distractions.
So somebody did take him, which was the St. Louis Rams, and a coach actually has the distractions to deal with. So let's see what Coach Jeff Fisher had to say. Longtime coach of the tennis, longtime NFL coach. He's been around forever, almost 20. He's been coaching as a head coach for nearly 20 years. But Jeff Fisher, coach of the Rams, said, "Let's define distraction. There were a couple of extra cameras during the early OTAs. There may have been an extra camera yesterday, as the rookies reported, and went on the field for the first time. But no, it's not a distraction." He called Sam a very passionate athlete who's very focused on trying to make this football team, and the Rams want to give him every opportunity to make a roster. This is a guy who's also not quite as successful as Dungy, but pretty doggone successful in his own right. Been to the Super Bowl, made the Titans, a perennial contender every year in the 90s and 2000s. And he said it's not a distraction. He rolled the dice on Sam, and he said, well, one extra camera, two extra cameras. I mean, how much are we talking about here? So, I don't know. Perry, like you said, I kind of don't know where the conclusion is. I just think Tony Dungy stepped in it a little bit with his remarks.
And possibly so. But here's the deal. Owners love distractions that sell tickets.
Of course.
And Michael Sams is going to sell tickets for the Rams on a very mediocre at best football team.
Right. You got a team, you're right about that.
So let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. But going from off the field to very on the field issues in Seattle, Marshawn Lynch, the beast, is holding out. Marshawn Lynch has run for over 4,000 yards in the last 3 seasons. He's been a critical force behind the ascension of the Seattle Seahawks from kind of a mediocre team to a contending team to now, of course, the defending Super Bowl champions. Marshawn Lynch is currently in the third year of a 4-year, $30 million deal. He's had a $6 million signing bonus. He's due to receive $5 million in base salary. He is holding out. Now, Marshawn Lynch has been in the league for, a few years now, and while he's still in his prime, that prime isn't going to last forever. There are a couple of issues here. First of all, just from a football standpoint, that's interesting. He's one of the biggest stars in the NFL. He's a force on that offense. But second of all, it's a recurring theme that we've had on this show about building wealth, empowerment. Marshawn Lynch knows the Seahawks, he's making a calculated decision. He is holding out because he thinks and I'm sure on professional advice, that the Seahawks need him enough to where they will pay him more than $5 million, to where they will renegotiate his deal in spite of holding out. Marshawn Lynch, and I'm speculating, but I don't think I'm reaching here, could only be in a position to make that and say poo-poo to $5 million and even talk about maybe retiring, which was speculated, if he had not taken care of his money, if he had not made wise investments, if he had not saved his money. So here's Marshawn Lynch saying, you can take your $5 million like Johnny Paycheck and shove it, or you can pay me what I'm worth. Not unlike last week, LeBron James, who pretty much said he's trying to maximize his earnings.
Contract.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, two things here. One, it's another case of players holding out. We hear that every year. And second of all, here's a guy who has empowered himself by making responsible decisions to put himself into a position where he has options and he can walk away if he has to. That is building wealth.
That is. But here's my concern there, man. This may be a strategy to his detriment because running backs have become commoditized in the NFL.
They have.
It's like you can get a running back. When was the last time a running back went in the first round?
It's been a while.
It didn't happen last year, and I think there was, 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years since a running back maybe went. I know there were none in 2014. I remember that.
So, running backs are their value just isn't what it was.
There was a time in the 90s when we had very different rules when you can knock receivers' heads off, plow the quarterbacks. Having that starting running back was almost as important as having that starting quarterback. Not quite, but almost.
Right.
And now you only have a handful of elite running backs. But Seattle they make their bread and butter offensively by running the football. Be it Lynch or Russell Wilson running. They're not a volume passing team.
No, but could they put a 4th or 5th round draft choice back there behind that great offensive line and get the same thing done?
It's a risk because
it is.
Because if that hypothetical, UFA or rookie free agent or low pick goes like Arian Foster and becomes a superstar, while Marshawn Lynch is holding the bag. On the other hand, Marshawn Lynch has kind of proven that even among that commoditized talent, he's still, at least for now, a game breaker, unlike some others. So you're right. It could be to his detriment. It's definitely a risk. But Seattle has a window that is open right now where they could actually put on a run. They could be a dynasty. And do you want to take a chance on an unknown, or do you want to break this guy off a few $1 million? It's a decision management has to make. But Marshawn Lynch has given himself the ability to have those options, whereas if he spent, as well I say on the show, spent all his money on rims, he's showing up to get his $5 million.
See, because this is the second week in a row that you've mentioned this rim thing, and I just got to ask you, man, do you wish you had some rims?
I've had rims before. I've blown some money on rims, man.
Let me clear this up, though, Eric, and one of the things that we don't do on Louisiana All American Sports is we don't like to perpetuate negative stereotypes. And in fact, Professor Johnson has that in today's show. It is not rims that are preventing folks from elevating from their station in life to a wealthier station in life. That is not it. There are plenty of people in the majority that frivolously spend their money. The difference is that they tend to make more money. When we have a day in time where you have Google, Microsoft, Yahoo all releasing statements saying that their employment force is only 2% African American. So these people they have wealthy employment in their companies, and they are not sharing that wealth with African Americans. So it's much deeper than buying rims.
Well, and let me also give some background. Anybody who's probably over the age of 30 and familiar with one of Chris Rock's older stand-up acts, that was a segue that Chris Rock had about basically saying take care of your money and build wealth. But
you got to make the money first.
Yeah.
I mean, we're more concerned about paying light bills, because of the revenue's just not there.
That's
Professor.
Right. Exactly. The rich, their money works for them. They're in a situation where they could create wealth, as you said, a steady revenue stream. And that's an excellent example that you gave here. I'm really impressed with
Well, thank you, sir. A little
He gave you a scratch and sniff sticker, Perry. You got an A
Yes,
on your paper this week. But
So go ahead.
I was just saying. So I mean, look, good for Marshawn Lynch is somebody who has that ability, and it looks like he is setting the example of somebody who's doing something he's supposed to be doing. He has built options for himself, and he is determining his own destiny. And that is something, I think, a lesson that I think all Americans, but especially Black Americans who are trying to climb that ladder, can observe, and I think should take note of. This is a guy much like LeBron, demanding what you're worth, taking care of your business, which is what he's doing. So anyway,
I think also that's the nature of the business. People put the running back star players, people that try to measure their worth and so on and so forth. And I think you mentioned about the last running back that was taken. I think my Green Bay Packers took Lacey.
Sure did. That's right. That was two years ago, right?
Wow, Dutchtown High graduate.
Yes. Eddie Lacy, good call. Nice. There's a base hit for the professor.
Yes.
So and that was That was 2 years ago, I believe. That was 2012. So that's been a while, and that's to your point about how commoditized they've become. I mean, if you're, excuse me, a little older, if you're say over the age of 25 or 30, I mean, you remember when every team had to have, back in the old days, you had your legendary Earl Campbell, Walter Payton, O.J. Simpson. And in the 80s, you had Eric Dickerson and Tony Dorsett. You had those superstars. In the 90s, you had an explosion of running backs. That really was a time when the running back was just a notch or two down from the quarterback as far as helping your team get to a Super Bowl and win it. And so now we have a whole, your Emmitt Smiths and Ricky Waters and guys of that ilk. But nowadays, you're right. It's you go that long without a running back being picked in the first round. That tells you how the position's been devalued and how it's all about throwing the football nowadays. Speaking of throwing the football, former LSU quarterback, and speaking of Tennessee Titans, actually, current Tennessee Titans quarterback Zach Mettenberger. Boy, oh boy, Zach Mettenberger has really taken a lot of beatings at the hands of the Alabama Crimson Tide during his short reign as LSU quarterback. Well, he took another one after getting out of school because last week, Zach Mettenberger was a standout quarterback for LSU, drafted by the Tennessee Titans. He's in Nashville now. He was sucker punched at a Nashville bar. According to the owner of the bar, Steve Ford, the owner of, I love, the name is just so ironic, Loser's Most Wanted Bar and Grill. Boy, you want to talk about the name just hitting the bullseye in the middle of the dartboard.
Wow.
This is what he said. Here's the truth. The guy said something about Roll Tide to Zach. And Zach turned around and said, good luck with that. That's what Ford told the newspaper Monday. And then the guy's friend sucker punched Zach Mettenberger. This is a silly mortals moment. Silly mortals. It is just a game.
Yeah.
It is just a game. And if you're living in Nashville, your Roll Tide credibility only goes so far. You're a long way from Tuscaloosa.
But they beat the heck out of Tennessee every year, so.
Yeah, well, that's true. So nobody pressed charges, and but that is just so. If your life is so limited to where you got to sucker punch a football player who's out of college on a rival school because he said good luck with that, to when you said Roll Tide, like Phyllis from Mulga, for you regular listeners, something is wrong with you. So that's just one of those things, guys. It's just a game. It's fun. I love it. That's the reason we're here. That's the reason a lot of y'all are listening. But it is just a game. Get a life. But like I said, poor Zach Mettenberger once again taking a beating at the hands of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
And Eric, did Zach retaliate, or did he take the moral high ground?
No, he basically turned the other cheek. He took it. Because he probably could have clobbered this drunk. Zach Mettenberger and he'd have gotten in trouble.
He would have gotten in trouble with Roger Goodell.
Yeah, yes. And he is not a little guy. So quarterbacks who are not getting beaten to death, and apparently, in spite of over a decade of NFL beatings, still feel like spring chickens. Just real quick funny story. Drew Brees, New Orleans Saints quarterback, y'all might know that name.
Yes,
Drew Brees, who just turned 35 years old early this year, said he thinks he could play for another 10 years. He said, I'm not in the decline like most guys, maybe in their mid-30s. In my eyes, I'm not in my mid-30s. I'm 25, Brees said after his first practice of his 14th NFL training camp. Now, that's nice to hear. I like hearing that as a Saints fan. I love the confidence. And to Brees' credit, he hasn't missed a start in his time with the Saints due to injury. So I think there is something to that. But, Drew, I think you might be a little overconfident there. When you say you can play till you're 45, that makes me wonder, well, you're going to use HGH, some PEDs. So I don't know. Good luck with that, Drew. I hope you are here at this level, even close for 10 years. I'm not putting my money on that roulette wheel there.
Eric, we've got to give the professor that single that you gave him went a little foul.
Hey, Perry, look at Perry with the analogies. Pretty good. What happened? What we got?
Eddie Lacy was actually drafted in the second round.
Wow. Another case in point, though.
No, but there were 3 in that draft that went in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Martin, David Wilson, and Trent Richardson.
Now, okay, yeah.
Trent Richardson.
That was another Bama running back.
Yes.
Well, yeah. But you're right. It was
Same team.
but you know what? 2 years after that, here we are, empty, no running back.
Right.
So speaking of Drew Brees' performance-enhancing drugs he might or might not be using, speaking of drugs, Josh Gordon, who is a very talented wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, had a breakout year last year. If you're a fantasy football player, you know who he is. Nearly at the top of the league for receiving statistics. But he's a troubled young man. He was suspended for a year after a meeting with league officials. This is he got a year-long ban after a failed drug test earlier this season. He tested positive for the wacky tobacco, marijuana. This is a guy. He was arrested and charged with a DUI. Earlier in this calendar year, 2014. This is an example of a guy who really needs a little help because this guy has the world in the palm of his hands, but he's kind of getting in his own way. And the thing about the pot test in the NFL, the way they collectively bargained it, they tell you it comes once a year, and you know when it's coming.
Right.
It's not a surprise.
Right.
Don't toke for 3 months, 2 months, whatever you got to do. But he couldn't do that. So but I really wish the best for Josh Gordon. But let's keep this. This is a lead and a segue.
Yeah.
Josh Gordon, a year for getting high.
Right.
For smoking marijuana, something that is not against the law in 2 states and has been heavily decriminalized in many states.
Absolutely right. But it's not so much that, Eric. This is a second offense. We've got to say that.
It is a repeat offense. It might even be, I think for a year, it has to be a third. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, this and shame on him.
Yes.
But his penalty was from 4 games to a year. No, actually, yeah. Anyway, 4 games to a year. So even the first offense is 4 games. And now it's a year for getting high. More than once, but getting high. Ray Rice, running back, Baltimore Ravens, Pro Bowl running back, Super Bowl champion. Ray Rice, there was a video that came out earlier this year in which he is dragging his fiancée, Renee Palmer, almost like an extra from Weekend at Bernie's, in an Atlantic City hotel, dragging her out. Oh, you know what? That might be more of us, or more of you, less of us?
Yeah. And I'll pick this up.
Okay.
This is regarding Ray Rice, this story, and he hits his wife, knocks her unconscious, and he gets a 2-game suspension by the NFL, and comparing that to the year-long suspension by the NFL for the substance abuse issue is where Eric is going.
Right. Yeah. He got 2 games for that. Now, granted, it's personal conduct penalty. It's a personal conduct penalty, which under the collective bargaining agreement, Roger Goodell has discretion. It's not fixed. Whereas the drug policy, it's very fixed. First offense, 4 games. I think second is a year, and third is a year plus indefinite. You have to apply for reinstatement. So, there are some differences here. But the bottom line is that after this graphic domestic violence that took place and was viewed by everybody, Ray Rice got 2 games, half of what you get for getting high the first time.
Right.
So I mean, what's more serious, wife abuse or toking a little wacky tobacco?
I know we have a caller on, man, but we've got about 30 seconds to this hard break.
Okay, Tim, if you could stay with us for a couple of minutes, we'll get you on the other side.
Okay, so we're coming right to you. What do we have coming up after the break?
All right, after the break, we have a little NBA fodder. I want to talk about my man Joel Embiid having a little fun, marketing himself a little bit, and then we have the America's pastime on the diamond.
The break is on.
Oh. We'll be back on 96.9 FM WHYR-LP, Baton Rouge Community Radio. Figured I'd say that for the whatchamacallit.
All right. Tim's a friend of mine who is dealing with domestic violence issues in Mobile.
Fantastic.
So that's why I had him call.
Perfect timing,
Yes.
Perry.
Perry is a mad scientist,
All
man.
right.
Good job. Awesome.
So let's go. All right. We had to take that break there. Caller, are you there? Fantastic. Tell the audience your name.
My name is Tim Hale Jr. from Mobile, Alabama.
Awesome, Tim. And Eric just spoke about Ray Rice and the domestic violence issue that he is going through and the NFL's suspension of a 2-game suspension. What are your thoughts there, Tim?
Well, it's always a two-edged sword, man. You're dealing with an industry that's talking about multi-millions, and the views that they have about domestic violence is a little different than what it should be in the communities. We shouldn't wait on the NFL to make claims or make punishments based on that. As a community, we got to stand up and we got to take charge. Things of this nature have been accepted so long till somebody got to say, "Hey, man, enough is enough." Now, whether he can run a football or not, that shouldn't stop the community from standing in and teaching young men values. Yes, it's a double standard because he's a millionaire. But what does it do for the guys in the hood that looks up to him?
So Tim.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're of the opinion that 2 games is not nearly enough.
Nah.
Okay, what do you think the situation should have been? And before you answer that, let me say that these 2 games are costing Ray Rice $500,000.
$529,411.24. That's 2 game checks plus 1 check from last season. So he's getting fined on top of the losing income.
Okay, so
a lot of money.
Share with us your thoughts on what an appropriate fine should be, and then I'll have another question for you that'll lead into what's going on in your community.
Well, let's just say that the monetary value is substantial. I got to say that. I can't sit here and say that anybody that to lose that type of money and not feel pain.
Right.
But at the same time, does this fix the problem? Because he can make that money up any kind of way using other money that he's already received. He can make that up. So taking his money for real is not the problem.
Okay.
Did they make him go to some mandatory domestic violence, counseling?
They did that voluntarily.
Oh yes, he did that voluntarily. He and his wife, and we also should point out that his wife was at all the news conferences, all the press conferences with him by his side.
She was Tammy Wynette standing by her man.
But go ahead, Tim. What would be an appropriate sanction in your thought process?
Let me just say this, and I hate to sound like I'm backtracking, but I respect the brother for what he did, and his wife for coming with him. But at the same time, the damage in the community for the kids that's not able to see this part, because that's not headlines. They're not going to headline that him and his wife were, working the things out, and all they said was, all they breaking up, and I hear this firsthand because I'm in education, and the kids in the school, they knocked his wife clean out. That's all they hear.
Right.
So they thinking it's cool.
Right.
They think it's cool, but so I feel like if he really want to make this better, he should take a stance and show, what he did was wrong and go out and reach out in the community because these kids don't understand. They don't understand real from fake. And so by him just losing 2 games, they're not even going to think about that.
Right. Okay. So tell me this, Eric. Does it say where that $500,000 is going? I could see if the NFL had donated that money to a domestic violence issue.
The NFL always donates fine money to charity. It's at their discretion, but I can only imagine since this was a very clear cause and effect, I'm sure it would go to a domestic violence charity.
Okay, so Tim, I know I've asked you to be on today's show, man, because of how passionate you are regarding this. If you could just briefly share with our listening audience what has transpired in Mobile, Alabama in the past month regarding domestic violence.
And I appreciate what you having me on the show this morning. And dude, in the last month, we we've lost 3 young ladies to domestic violence.
It's in Mobile you're talking about.
Yes, in Mobile.
Okay.
In Mobile, Alabama, in this every week of July, we lost somebody because of domestic violence. A young lady. What happened? You had 2 young ladies shot, and you had 1 young lady stabbed and burned.
Wow.
House set on fire, and the 2 young ladies that were shot were trying to. The guys, after they did what they did, they tried to make it look like an intruder did it. You know, and these were done in front of the kids.
Right.
So the kids were the witnesses. So I'm just saying, where is the sense of value for the kids? Nobody's caring about the kids. You know, it's like the mentality is I do the crime, then I go do this little time, and I'm out, and I'm gonna do it again. That's the mentality that the kids have in my area, in the community, and I'm here to tell them it's not cool. Ain't nothing cool about it. It's selfish. And people got to understand that not only do you hurt the victim's family, but you hurt your family. Your mom got to stand in court and try to defend you. Your mom got to come up with these thousands of dollars to pay these lawyers to try to keep you out of jail for something you did on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Right. Hey, Tim. Hey, man. Much love to you for your passion regarding this issue.
Thank you for calling us today.
Yeah, thank you for calling in, and hopefully, man, you have started a consciousness in Mobile that will resolve this particular issue. So
right now we at the Penelope House at Lions Park in Mobile, Alabama, doing a rally right now. I stepped away from the rally to come make this phone call. So we're doing a rally right now, man. It's probably about 100 people out here, and you got young ladies that have been in abusive relationships. They're out there speaking and doing other things. So, yes, we have taken a stance. The local DJs and community leaders, we are making a stance.
awesome. Go ahead, good brother. I'll holler at you later.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Tim.
Peace.
Peace, Tim.
Let's take a quick break.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back. I might want to say something
Go ahead.
real quick. I just wanted to say something. I think it's great. I really appreciate that, and it's kind of a community message that, you know, Tim is doing something he's passionate about and trying to make a difference in his neck of the woods. And I'll just say that if you have an opportunity, and I learned this lesson a little later in life, I'm almost 40, but I learned this about 3 years ago. If you find something that you're passionate about, that you could do, volunteer, make a difference. It's enriching to you, and you're going to reap what you sow in a good way. That's why we're on the air. And Tim was just another example of that different subject, but just an example, folks. Find something you like and volunteer. You'll be better for it.
A little Houdini. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to get into our history segment that the professor normally does remotely, and he's in-house today. So he's going to drop a little science on us regarding some history. Go ahead, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. And again, I want to welcome on these. I feel privileged to be here. And listening audience, I hope you enjoy what I have to say today. I want to just give a brief overview and share with you the origins of Jim Crow. And I want to use these objects of intolerance to teach tolerance and promote social justice. The origins of Jim Crow. Jim Crow was formulated in 1830 through the 1840s by a white entertainer named Thomas Rice. The popular singer and dancer supposedly modeled after a slave, a character he named Jim Crow. Jim Crow was over-exaggerated, a buffoon, used distorted Negro animation and in vernacular English. This was the Jim Crow persona. Actually, the system of Jim Crow after the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, for most southern states and later in border states, passed laws that denied blacks basic human rights. It is not clear how the minstrel characteristic came into play, but became kind of a shorthand for the laws. The blackening of the faces became common through the minstrel theme. White performers used burnt cork and Greek grass paint and shoe polish to darken their skin. The American caste system, Jim Crow, refers to the racial hierarchy that defined through African American through American life a set of laws and practices which elevated the whites at the top and blacks at the bottom. everyday segregation during this time period, the Jim Crow period, a black person might be forced to ride a bus or a train in the rear, but each time a white person boarded a vehicle, the African American passenger had to move back a row. This added indignity to the black passengers who were often forced to carry the sign back. For colored patrons, the sign was taken, in one instance, the colored sign was taken by a white woman from Michigan who was a visitor here in Louisiana in the 1920s. She removed the sign because she said segregation offended her. So thus we have the overview of what Jim Crow was, the system of segregation, and the origins of the character of Jim Crow. And I gave Perry a picture. I know you guys can't see it, but I just wanted him to see the imagery that they were using to display and exaggerate the African American characteristics.
You know, I know it's not queued up, but we could cue Jim Moore for this one. Sick.
Oh yeah.
Sick.
Oh yeah. You're right.
Most disgusting, rudest, sick demonstrations in my entire career. Probably the worst. When I'll say this, those are some sick people. Mentally sick. People are sick when they do something like that. Absolutely friggin' sick. Mentally sick.
Awesome.
So that was right on time, man. We're going to jump into our baseball. Hey, look, we are a sports show, and I know we've dealt with a couple of different issues today. One was because of the sports-related situation, and the other is because it's society, and sports generally reflects society.
Well, let me tell you, man, when it's so funny. If I had known what you were going to say, I would have unfiltered myself in our opening segment, because when I said Tony Dungy had a little ring of 1960s to it, I was actually thinking it had a little ring of Jim Crow to it.
Wow.
I didn't want to be inflammatory,
Right.
but if I had known that's what was coming up, I definitely would have taken the filter off.
Right. Hence the value of rehearsal.
Right.
But that's okay. Here we go. Let's go into baseball.
All right, so Major League Baseball. Any chance we can get center field queued up? Which would probably be under C on that chart,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Major League Baseball, let's move on to the Diamond. Maybe I may have neglected to pull it up there, my bad. But let's move on to the Diamond, Major League Baseball. First of all, let's talk about where we are in the pennant races. It's really getting tight. There's only one division that is starting to have some space between the first place team and the second place team, and that's the American League Central. The Detroit Tigers are really starting to space themselves ahead of the Kansas City Royals. They're 7 games ahead of Kansas City. Detroit's, I've been saying since the start of the year, they're going to run away and win that division. That running away is beginning to start. In the American League East, much closer, the Baltimore Orioles are in first place for now. The New York Yankees and Toronto Blue Jays are holding their own, only 3 games back, and the Yankees have been really decimated by a lot of problems in their pitching rotation. Masahiro Tanaka is out for quite some time, but they're hanging in there. The Tampa Bay Rays, who had almost been written off for dead. This is a team we expected to possibly win the division. They are quietly coming back in that race. They've won 8 of their last 10. They're now just a couple of games back in the wild card chase. Joe Madden deserves manager of the decade for some of the silky turn from a sow's ear.
Hey man, they beat up on the Cardinals.
Boy, they did. The Rays are getting hot at the right time. They do this every year. They seem to just put on a surge. So keep an eye on that. That's always a fun team to watch. Maybe David Price doesn't get traded either before the deadline, because now they have a chance. In the American League West, it's a 2-team race between the Oakland Athletics and Perry predicted the LA Angels would win that division. The Los Angeles Angels made a power move. They got Houston Street, one of the best save leaders in the National League. He was with the San Diego Padres, who are one of the worst teams in the National League, but he was among the saves leaders. Well, now he's with the LA Angels, so That's some empowerment there.
But not so much win the division, Eric. I think either the Angels or the Tigers are going to represent the American League in the World Series this year.
Wow, you're going pennant. Now,
yes.
And see, interestingly, ever since Oakland acquired Jeff Samardzija and Jason Hamill from the Chicago Cubs, I've kind of said the weights tipped to Oakland. One thing's for sure, we have a competitive race here in the American League.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a fight. I love it. Seattle Mariners are 10.5 back. They're out of the division race, but very much alive in the wild card race. If the season ended today, they would be just a sliver out, I think 1 game back of that wild card chase. In the National League East, I feel like a broken record every week with this. Washington and Atlanta. Washington for the moments in first place as of yesterday morning. Yesterday afternoon they were a game and a half ahead of the Atlanta Braves. If the wind blows, that could change. That's coming down to the final week of the year. That's a 2-team race.
2.5 games as of this morning.
So it is 2.5. So there's more. Atlanta did lose last night. That's correct. So there's more spacing out. Miami's 8 games back in third place. That's a 2-team race. The NL Central. That's another. I don't know where that's going to shape up right now. First through third place is separated by 3 games. Milwaukee Brewers still in first place. They took a loss on the chin last night. Southern University alum Ricky Weeks was actually the last person to hold a bat in his hand because K-Rod, Fernando Rodriguez, uncharacteristically blew a save. It's the second time in 2 weeks I've seen him do that. St. Louis 3 games back. The Pittsburgh Pirates are just starting to come around. They've won 7 of their last 10 and getting healthy. And so they're putting their stamp on there. Cincinnati Reds are still in it at 6 games back. In the National League West, it's a 2-team race. The San Francisco Giants, for the moment, are in first place. They're a game and a half of the LA Dodgers. The Giants went through a valley. Now they're back at a peak. They've won 7 of their last 10. They've gotten really hot since the All-Star break.
And coming up in just about 10 minutes.
Oh, wow. We've got Noel Jackson with Music Satisfaction here on 96.9 FM, WHYR-LP, Baton Rouge Community Radio. League leaders in the American League. Jose Altuve is right now, of the Houston Astros, the fine shortstop right now, is the American League batting leader with a .338 average. He did get robbed of 1 hit last night on a web gem. I believe that was against the Orioles, if I remember. If you watch the highlights, you'll see a dandy. Robinson Cano, who's helping the Seattle Mariners resurge, second in that race with a .329 average. Victor Martinez of the Detroit Tigers in third with .323, followed by Adrian Beltre of the Rangers, .322. In the National League, Troy Tulowitzki's led, it seems like from wire to wire. He's still the NL batting leader, but now that lead is so much that he has a .340 average. Second place is Matt Adams of the St. Louis Cardinals, and you can say that 16-point difference could be partially accounted for by the fact he plays in that thin air in Colorado. But hey, don't hate the player, hate the game. Andrew McCutchen, reigning National League MVP with a .318 average, and Louisiana native Jonathan Lucroy of the Milwaukee Brewers, the catcher. He's having a breakout year. He has a .314 batting average. He's in 4th place in the NL batting race. In the American League, Jose Abreu, my vote, I think is a slam dunk for Rookie of the Year of the Chicago White Sox, leading the American League in home runs with 29. Nelson Cruz of the Orioles with 28. And Edward Encarnacion, who I think is a candidate for American League MVP with 26. Tied for 4th place is a name we all know, Big Papi David Ortiz of the Boston Red Sox, and another American League MVP candidate, Mike Trout of the Los Angeles Angels with 24 home runs. Home runs in the National League, Anthony Rizzo, one of the probably the only bright spot left with the Chicago Cubs with 25. Giancarlo Stanton, an MVP candidate of his own with the Miami Marlins, 23 home runs. Troy Tulowitzki, a strong MVP candidate in the NL with 21 home runs for the Colorado Rockies. RBIs, Miguel Cabrera, the reigning 2-time American League MVP with 80. Mike Trout of the Detroit Tigers. Mike Trout of the LA Angels with 76. And Nelson Cruz and of the Orioles and Jose Abreu of the White Sox with 74, tied for 3rd in the American League RBI chase. In the National League, Giancarlo Stanton of the Miami Marlins currently with the lead at 66. Adrian Gonzalez of the LA Dodgers, no surprise there. He is tied with Paul Goldschmidt of the Arizona Diamondbacks with 65. The aforementioned Andrew McCutchen of the Pittsburgh Pirates with 63 RBIs. Wins in the American League, Max Scherzer looking like the reigning Cy Young, American League Cy Young winner, picking up where he left off with 12 wins. He's tied with Masahiro Tanaka of the New York Yankees and his teammate Rick Porcello of the Detroit Tigers, all with 12 wins. Tanaka's going to fall behind. He's out for at least another 4 weeks with an elbow injury. And 2 other standouts, King Felix Hernandez, a former Cy Young winner, and Jared Weaver of the Los Angeles Angels with 11 wins in the AL. Felix Hernandez, the ace pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. In the National League, first place, Adam Wainwright of Perry St. Louis Cardinals, tied with Madison Bumgarner and of the San Francisco Giants, and Alfredo Simon of the Cincinnati Reds, all with 12 wins, tied for top of the National League win total. Kyle Loesch of the Milwaukee Brewers and Lance Lynn, who I picked on a few times, but he's right now they're tied for fourth in the NL with 11 wins. So I guess I got to watch what I say. ERA leaders, King Felix Hernandez on top with a 2.02 ERA. The next closest is Scott Kazmir of the Oakland Athletics with 2.32. So Hernandez is really starting to put a gap there. And in the National League, very tight ERA chase, if you will. Clayton Kershaw of the LA Dodgers with a 1.92 ERA. He's the reigning Cy Young winner. That might be 2 times. Adam Wainwright in second place at 2.02 of the St. Louis Cardinals, and Johnny Cueto of the Cincinnati Reds with a 2.18 ERA in third place in that chase. In the National League. American League save leaders, Fernando Rodney continuing to stay on top, 27 saves. He is followed by Greg Robertson of the Kansas City Royals with 26 and David Robertson of the New York Yankees with 25. So it looks like Robertson is filling in some very big shoes of Mariano Rivera rather well. In the National League, Craig Kimbrell of the Atlanta Braves and Trevor Rosenthal of the St. Louis Cardinals, both tied in first place with 30. K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez, will be in that number, but boy, did he blow it last night. He is in second place with Kenley Jansen of the LA Dodgers with 29. Houston Street is fifth in the NL save race, but that's as far as he'll go. He was traded to the LA Angels, so he's now in the American League. So awesome. That is our wrap-up of Major League Baseball statistical leaders. So
as the show is winding down, we've got about 6 minutes, 5.5 minutes left. Let's hear your thoughts on today's show. And I know it's your first time in the studio with us, Professor. But let's hear, and if you have an overview of today's show.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm observing these two gentlemen, and you guys are consummate professionals. I'm just privileged to be here. Eric is quite knowledgeable. I am really impressed.
He really is.
My friends and family might say a vault of useless trivia, but thank you, Professor. I appreciate that.
Never a vault of useless trivia. I am totally impressed. I'm just sitting back and observing, taking it all in. Hopefully I can interject more.
Sure.
As now that I understand the standing operating procedures, I will be better prepared.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything in these last couple of minutes?
Yeah, we got a couple of nuggets at the very end. I know we got 4.5 minutes left. I don't want to keep beating a dead horse. When somebody beats a live woman, I have a problem with that. So just to follow up, it must be Domestic Violence Week on Louisiana All American Sports. Chuck Knobloch, former 1991 American League Rookie of the Year, 4-time All-Star, was set to be inducted into the Minnesota Twins Hall of Fame next month at Target Field, but he was arrested this past Wednesday night on charges that he allegedly assaulted his ex-wife. This isn't the first time. 4 years ago, he was convicted of whooping on a previous wife before and sentenced to a year in prison. So shame on you, Chuck Knobloch, but good stance by the Minnesota Twins. The president of the Twins, Dave St. Peter, said we have no plans to reschedule his induction to the Twins Hall of Fame. I suppose over time this could be revisited, but at this time, from the Twins organization perspective, we currently have no intent to reschedule. So he won a World Series, but he's not winning the hearts of his own Twins fans. Shame on you. That's 2 times, so shame on you, Chuck.
I have no empathy for him. The way he won the World Series was against the St. Louis Cardinals.
No, Atlanta Braves. Braves. That was 87. Yep. No, that was one with the fake at second base. Faked out Lonnie Smith. But yes. But I know you got some animosity towards the Twins because they did stick it. I remember that.
Major bias about those Cardinals.
I feel you. I feel you. That's fanhood, man. So we're how much time? There's about 3.5 minutes left.
Here's another thing that I would like to see in future shows, and maybe next week, with this with the NCAA ruling that that they are going to start issuing some compensation to these players.
Right.
There's a lot of talk in the sports atmosphere regarding what does that mean for mid-majors, and more particularly, what is that going to mean for our HBCUs moving forward?
Right.
So I definitely would like our show to take on that topic and get our listeners involved, because we know that outside of those top 5 major conferences, the rest of the sports amateur landscape may not be able to compete
Right.
monetarily.
Right, and that was a recurring theme that was brought up over and over and over again
Right.
in this past trial, and we definitely will keep you abreast of that as we get close to the college football season.
Right.
What do you guys think about the upcoming playoff scenario in college football?
I like it. I think it's long. I personally, I would rather 8 teams, but you know what? As a friend of mine would say, oatmeal is better than no meal. I'll take 4.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
That's right. You got that right. Last note, real quick, boys and girls, if you want a fun follow on Twitter, follow Philadelphia 76ers center Joel Embiid. That's spelled Joel, Joel Embiid, EMBIID. This guy's a character. This dude already asked Rihanna and Kim Kardashian out on dates via Twitter in a very colorful manner, tried to recruit LeBron James and said, man, LeBron didn't respond to me. I've got to block you. Joel, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. So, real funny follow there on Twitter, though.
All right. So, Eric, you know the routine.
As we always say,
ADT, JNS, love you.
have a good afternoon.